The cantina on Zeta Prime fell silent when the Velcan diplomat spoke the name. Even the mechanical bartender stopped its movements for a moment. Zex Thor's scaled hands trembled slightly as he lifted his drink, and every alien in the room leaned closer to hear his words. "The regret," he whispered again, and several patrons actually stepped back from their tables. The young Corvan trader who had asked the question now looked like he regretted it. His blue skin had turned pale, and his antenna drooped with fear. "You mean the human death ship is real?" the trader asked. Zex Thor nodded slowly. His large eyes, which had seen the rise and fall of empires, held a haunted look that made even the toughest mercenaries in the room uncomfortable. "I was there when it happened," Zex Thor said. 15 years ago at Kepler Station. I watched that ship turn from a vessel of exploration into something that still gives me nightmares. Across the galaxy, similar conversations were happening. On trading posts, military stations, and diplomatic centers, beings from dozens of species shared stories about the human vessel that had vanished into the void sector. Some claimed it was just a legend, but those who had lived through the dark years knew better. Commander Alex Turner sat in his ready room aboard the UHS Phoenix, reading reports that made his blood run cold. Strange energy signatures had been detected in the outer rim. Ships were disappearing, and the descriptions from the few survivors all pointed to the same impossible conclusion. Admiral Lisa Grant's face appeared on his screen, her expression grim. "Alex, I'm sending you the classified files on the UHS Regret," she said. "What you're about to read stays between us." Turner opened the files and felt his stomach drop. The Regret had been one of humanity's most advanced ships, equipped with experimental weapons and shield technology. Its captain, Jake Morrison, had been a decorated hero with an perfect record. The crew had been handpicked from the best humanity had to offer. "What happened to them?" Turner asked. "They went rogue," Grant replied. "After the Kepler Station massacre, Morrison took his ship into alien space without authorization. We lost contact with them 13 years ago. Command declared them dead and classified the whole thing." Turner scrolled through the reports. The numbers were staggering. In the 2 years before they disappeared, the Regret had destroyed over 200 alien vessels. They had attacked pirate bases, raided criminal organizations, and left a trail of destruction across the outer rim. "The aliens started calling it the human death ship," Grant continued. "Some species still won't trade with us because of what the Regret did. Morrison and his crew became something we never wanted them to become." Back on Zeta Prime, Zex Thor was still talking to the frightened crowd. "I was stationed at Kepler when the raiders came," he said. "It was supposed to be a peaceful research station. Scientists, families, children. The raiders hit without warning." His voice broke slightly. Even after all these years, the memory was painful. "We tried to help, but we were too late. When the Ayer human fleet arrived, there was nothing left but bodies and burning wreckage. Captain Morrison found his sister among the dead." The Corvan trader's eyes widened. "His sister?" Dr. Amy Collins. She was one of the lead researchers. Morrison held her body for 3 hours before his crew could convince him to let go. The room was completely silent now. Even the music had stopped. "That's when something changed in him," Zex Thor continued. "I watched him order his ship to pursue the raiders. His superiors told him to return to base, but he refused. The last thing I heard over the communications was Morrison telling his crew they were going to hunt down every single raider involved. Turner studied the tactical reports from the Regrets rampage. Morrison's methods had become increasingly brutal. He took prisoners for interrogation, attacked civilian targets that supported the raiders, and showed no mercy to anyone who got in his way. His crew had followed him into darkness, becoming something that even hardened soldiers feared. "Why are you telling me this now?" Turner asked Grant. "Because 3 days ago, a cargo ship reported seeing a vessel matching the Regrets profile in the Void sector," Grant replied. "The ship that attacked, them used weapons we've never seen before. The survivors described technology that shouldn't exist." Turner felt a chill run down his spine. The Void sector was where ships went to disappear. It was a region of space so dangerous that even the most desperate pirates avoided it. "You think Morrison is still alive?" "I think something that used to be Morrison might still be alive," Grant said. "And if the Regret has returned, we need to know why." On a distant world called Haven's Rest, an old alien barkeep named Gorthak was cleaning glasses when a group of young humans walked in. They were laughing and joking, completely unaware of the fear their presence caused among the alien patrons. One of the humans mentioned that their ship was called the New Hope, and they were explorers looking for new worlds to colonize Gorthak's. 4 arms stopped moving. He had seen young, hopeful humans before. 15 years ago, they had been different, before the Regret changed everything. "Listen to me, young ones," Gorthak said in his deep, rumbling voice. "Be careful out here. There are things in the dark that hunt ships like yours," the humans laughed. "Come on, old-timer. What could be worse than pirates?" Gorthak's expression grew serious. "Pirates you can fight. Pirates you can reason with. But there are ghosts in the void that remember old wounds. And some ghosts carry grudges that burn hotter than stars." Turner prepared his ship for departure. He had been ordered to investigate the energy signatures and determine if the Regret had really returned. His crew was nervous. Everyone in the fleet had heard the stories, even if they pretended not to believe them. "Sir," his tactical officer said, "what are our orders if we encounter the Regret?" Turner looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, Jake Morrison might still be alive. The man who had been humanity's greatest hero had become its greatest shame. The ship that had once represented the best of human exploration had become a symbol of what humans could become when pushed too far. "Our orders are to observe and report," Turner said. "But if Morrison really is out there, if he's become what the reports say he has, then God help us all." As the Phoenix jumped to hyperspace, heading toward the Void sector, Turner couldn't shake the feeling that they were flying toward something that would change everything. The Regret had been gone for 13 years, but its legend had only grown stronger. In cantinas across the galaxy, aliens still whispered its name with fear. In human space, it was a secret shame that Command tried to forget. But secrets had a way of coming back, and some ghosts refused to stay buried. The most feared vessel in the galaxy was about to return, and nobody was ready for what it had become. 15 years earlier, Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UHS Regret, watching the stars streak past in hyperspace. His crew was excited about their mission to establish first contact with a new alien species near the Kepler system. Morrison himself felt proud to command such a fine ship with such dedicated people. Chief Engineer Ryan Murphy walked onto the bridge carrying 2 cups of coffee. He had been Morrison's friend since their academy days, and he knew the captain better. "Then anyone nervous about the mission?" Murphy asked, handing Morrison one of the cups. "A little," Morrison admitted. "First contact protocols are tricky. One wrong move, and we could start a war." Lieutenant Kate Barnes looked up from her tactical station. She was young but brilliant, with a sharp mind for strategy and an even sharper sense of right and wrong. "Sir, we're receiving a priority message from Kepler Station," she said. "It's marked urgent." Morrison felt his stomach tighten. Urgent messages during deep space missions were never good news. "Put it through to my ready room," he ordered. The message that played on his screen made his blood freeze. Dr. Amy Collins, his younger sister and the lead researcher at Kepler Station, appeared on the screen. Her face was dirty and streaked with tears. Behind her, Morrison could see smoke and the flickering light of fires. "Jake, if you get this message, don't come to Kepler," Amy said, her voice shaking. "Raiders hit us 3 hours ago. They're not taking prisoners. They're killing everyone, even the children." The transmission cut to static, and Morrison stared at the blank screen for several long seconds. His hands were trembling as he opened a channel to the bridge. "Murphy, Barnes, get up here now," he ordered. When his officers arrived, Morrison's face was pale but determined. "Change course for Kepler Station, maximum speed," he said. "Sir." "The colony. Ships reported that sector clear yesterday," Barnes said. "Maybe it's just a communications error." Morrison played the message for them. Murphy's face went white, and Barnes gripped her console so hard her knuckles turned pale. "How long until we reach Kepler?" Morrison asked. "At maximum speed, 18 hours, Murphy replied. "Too long," Morrison said. "Strip power from everything non-essential and push the engines past their safety limits." Murphy nodded and rushed to engineering. Barnes remained on the bridge, trying to raise Kepler Station on long-range communications. For 16 hours, they heard nothing but static. When the Regret dropped out of hyperspace near Kepler Station, the sight that greeted them was worse than Morrison's worst nightmare. The station was a burning wreck, its hull torn open by weapons fire. Debris floated in space like scattered bones. "Life signs?" Morrison asked, his voice barely a whisper. Barnes ran multiple scans before shaking her head. "Nothing, sir. I'm reading. Over 2,000 bodies, but no life signs." Morrison closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them with grim determination. "Prepare a shuttle. I'm going over there." "Sir, it might not be safe," Murphy protested. "I don't care," Morrison replied. "These were our people. My sister is over there." The shuttle trip to the station felt like it took forever. Morrison suited up and entered through a breach in the hull. The corridors were filled with floating debris and bodies. Men, women, children, all killed without mercy. He found Amy in what had been the main laboratory. She was curled up behind an overturned table, still clutching a datapad. Morrison pulled off his helmet and held his sister's body, rocking back and forth as tears floated in the zero gravity. When he finally returned to the Regret 3 hours later, his crew barely recognized him. The man who had been their confident, optimistic captain was gone. In his place stood someone harder, colder, filled with a rage that seemed to burn behind his eyes. "Sir," Barnes said carefully, "we've detected the Raiders' ion trail. They left the system heading toward the Vorthan sector." Morrison stared at the tactical display for a long moment. "Plot an intercept course," he ordered. "Sir, we should report back to command first," Murphy said. "They need to know what happened. Here." "No," Morrison said, his voice like ice. "Send a message buoy with the sensor logs. We're going after them." Barnes exchanged a worried glance with Murphy. The Vorthan sector was outside human space, in lawless territory where anything could happen, sir. Our orders were to establish first contact with the Denari delegation, Murphy reminded him. "Command is expecting us." Morrison turned to face his friend, and Murphy stepped back at the look in his eyes. "Command can wait," Morrison said. These butchers killed over 2,000 innocent people. They killed scientists, researchers, families. They killed my sister." He moved to the captain's chair and sat down heavily. "Plot that intercept course, Barnes. Murphy, I want every weapon system online and ready. We're going to hunt down every single one of these animals," the crew carried out. His orders, but Morrison could see the uncertainty in their faces. They had signed up to explore new worlds and make peaceful contact with alien species. They hadn't expected to become hunters. 2 days later, they caught up with the raider fleet at an asteroid mining station. Morrison studied the tactical display and saw 12 ships of various designs. Pirates, smugglers, and mercenaries who preyed. "On weak targets. Sir, we're outnumbered 4-1, Barnes reported. "I don't care," Morrison replied. "Open a channel to the lead ship." When the alien commander appeared on screen, Morrison felt his rage surge. The creature was a Vorthak, a species known for their brutality and love of violence. "Human ship, you are in Vorthak space," the alien snarled. "Turn around or be destroyed. I'm Captain Jake Morrison of the UHS Regret," Morrison said, his voice deadly calm. "You attacked Kepler Station and murdered innocent people. I'm here to collect payment for that debt." The Vorthak laughed, showing rows of sharp teeth. The human colony was weak and pathetic. They died like the cowards they were. "Now you will join them." Morrison cut the channel and turned to Barnes. "Target their lead ship and fire everything we have." "Sir, shouldn't we try to take prisoners for interrogation?" Barnes asked. Morrison's expression didn't change. "No prisoners," he said. "No mercy. They showed none to the families at Kepler, and we'll show none to them. The battle was swift and brutal. The Regret's advanced weapons and shields gave them a huge advantage, but Morrison pressed the attack with a ferocity that shocked his crew. When enemy ships tried to surrender, he ordered them destroyed anyway. When the last raider ship exploded, in a ball of fire, Morrison stood and looked at his crew. Some of them were staring at him with expressions he had never seen before. "Sir," Murphy said quietly, "we should head back to human space now. We've avenged Kepler." Morrison shook his head. This was just one group. The attack on Kepler was coordinated by multiple raider clans. "We're going to find every single one of them." Barnes looked up from her console with concern. "Sir, we're receiving orders from Fleet Command to return immediately." Morrison considered this for a moment, then made a decision. That would change everything. "Signal failure," he ordered. "We're staying dark until this mission is complete." Murphy stepped forward, his face troubled. "Jake, this isn't what we signed up for. This isn't what Starfleet stands for." Morrison turned to his oldest friend, and Murphy saw something in his eyes. That made him take a step back. "Starfleet let those people die," Morrison said. "Starfleet wasn't there when families were being slaughtered. We were too late to save them. But we're not too late to make their killers pay." As the Regret turned away from the wreckage and headed deeper into alien space, Morrison's transformation was complete. The man who had once represented the best of humanity had taken the first steps toward becoming something far darker. 3 months after Kepler Station, the UHS Regret had become something unrecognizable. The clean white corridors were now scarred with battle damage that Morrison refused to have repaired. The walls were covered with tactical displays showing raider movements, shipping routes, and target profiles. Morrison stood in what had once been the ship's conference room, now converted into a war room. The table was covered with captured alien weapons, data cores, and intelligence gathered from their raids. His uniform was wrinkled and stained, and he hadn't shaved in weeks. Chief Engineer Ryan Murphy entered the room carrying a report, but he hesitated when he saw his friend. Morrison had lost weight, and his eyes held a haunted intensity that made Murphy uncomfortable. "We've finished analyzing the data from the Corvin pirate base," Murphy said carefully. "It confirms what the prisoners told us. There's a larger organization coordinating these attacks." Morrison looked up from the alien star charts he had been studying. In 3 months, they had destroyed 27 raider ships and attacked 6 pirate bases. Each victory brought them closer to the truth behind the Kepler massacre. "What's the name of this organization?" Morrison asked. "They call themselves the Blood Tide Syndicate," Murphy replied. "According to our intelligence, they're planning to hit 3 more human colonies in the next month." Morrison's hands clenched into fists. The thought of more innocent families suffering the same fate as Kepler filled him with rage. "Where are they based?" The prisoners mentioned a fortress station called Crimson Rock. "It's deep in the Vorthan territory, heavily defended." Lieutenant Kate Barnes walked into the room, her expression troubled. Like everyone else on the crew, she had changed during their months in alien space. The idealistic young officer had been replaced by someone harder, more cynical. "Sir, I'm receiving another message from Fleet Command," she said. "Admiral Grant is ordering us to return immediately. She says if we don't respond within 24 hours, we'll be declared rogue." Morrison looked at the message display and deleted it without reading it. "We're not going back until the job is finished," he said. Murphy stepped forward, his face showing the strain of their long hunt. "Jake, we need to talk about what we're doing here. The crew is starting to question some of your orders." Morrison's expression darkened. "What kind of questions?" "Yesterday you ordered us to destroy that transport ship even after they surrendered. Those weren't raiders. They were just smugglers, carrying medical supplies." "Medical supplies that were going to raider bases," Morrison replied coldly. "Anyone who supports these animals is just as guilty as they are." Barnes shifted uncomfortably. The transport ship incident had bothered her too, but she hadn't dared to speak up. "Sir, maybe we should consider returning to human space," she said. "We've done significant damage to the raider networks. Command will want to debrief us and plan a larger operation." Morrison turned to look at her, and Barnes felt a chill run down her spine. The captain she had once admired and respected was gone. In his place stood someone she barely recognized. "Command had their chance to act," Morrison said. "They failed. They let Kepler happen because they were too worried about diplomatic relations. With alien governments, they care more about politics than protecting human lives." He moved to the tactical display and pointed to a cluster of red markers. "These are confirmed raider bases. Each one represents hundreds of murdered innocents. Each one is a threat to human colonies. We're the only ones willing to do what needs to be done." Over the following weeks, Morrison's methods became increasingly brutal. He began taking prisoners for interrogation, using techniques that violated every rule of warfare. When his crew expressed concerns, he reminded them of the bodies floating in Kepler Station. The ship itself began to change as well. Morrison ordered his engineers to strip weapons and technology from captured raider vessels. The Regret's hull was modified with alien armor plating, and its weapon systems were upgraded with captured technology. Marine Sergeant Paul Davis became Morrison's most loyal enforcer. Davis had lost his brother at Kepler, and his anger matched Morrison's own. He led boarding parties that showed no mercy to enemy crews, and he never questioned Morrison's orders. Communications officer Nina Ross tried to maintain contact with human space, but Morrison ordered her to monitor only. Any attempt to send messages without his approval was considered mutiny. Dr. Carl Stevens, the ship's physician, documented the psychological changes he observed in the crew. Isolation, constant combat, and Morrison's leadership were transforming them into something that barely resembled Starfleet officers, Captain, Stevens said during one of their few private meetings. I'm seeing signs of severe trauma in over half the crew. They need counseling, rest, contact with home. Morrison looked at the doctor with tired eyes. What they need is justice for Kepler. Everything else is secondary. The breaking point came when they raided a pirate supply depot on a small moon. The facility was lightly defended, and the Regrets assault team quickly overwhelmed the guards. But when they searched the base, they found something that changed everything, sir. Davis reported over the comm. You need to see this. Morrison beamed down to find Davis standing in a storage bay filled with personal belongings. Clothes, jewelry, family photos, children's toys. All taken from human colonies that had been raided. Morrison picked up a small stuffed animal that belonged to a child from Kepler. His sister had given it to one of the researcher's daughters just days before the attack. How many colonies? Morrison asked, his voice barely a whisper. Based on what we found here, at least 12, Davis replied. All hit in the last 2 years. Morrison stood in the storage bay surrounded by the belongings of murdered families, and something inside him finally broke. The last remaining piece of the man he had once been died in that moment when he returned. To the ship, Morrison called his senior staff together. We're not just hunting the raiders who hit Kepler, he announced. We're going to destroy the entire blood-tied syndicate. Every ship, every base, every person who has ever worked with them. Murphy tried to object, but Morrison cut him off. This is what we were meant to do. Not explore pretty planets or make friends with aliens who stab us in the back. We were meant to protect humanity, and that's exactly what we're going to do. Barnes looked around the room at the faces of her fellow officers. Some looked relieved to finally have a clear mission. Others looked terrified of what Morrison was becoming. Sir, that could take years, she said. Morrison smiled for the first time in months, but it wasn't a pleasant expression. Then we'll take years. However long it takes, we'll hunt them down as the Regret set course for Crimson Rock. Morrison made one final decision. He ordered Nina Ross to send a message to Fleet Command. Tell them the UHS Regret died at Kepler Station, he said. What we are now is something else entirely. The message was never sent. 3 days later, Ross was found dead in her quarters, apparently from a malfunction in her environmental suit. Morrison promoted Davis to replace her, and from that day forward, all communications were strictly controlled. The hunt continued, and with each passing month, the Regret became more infamous throughout alien space. Pirates began to abandon their bases when they heard rumors of the human death ship approaching. Some alien governments tried to negotiate with Morrison, offering to help hunt raiders in exchange for leaving their territory alone. Morrison's response was always the same. Anyone who had ever supported or harbored raiders was an enemy of humanity. There would be no deals, no mercy, no prisoners. The crew that had once been Starfleet's finest had become something that even their enemies feared to face. 2 years after Kepler Station, the UHS Regret had become a legend of terror in the Outer Rim. The ship that had once been humanity's pride now looked like something from a nightmare. Its hull was a patchwork of human and alien technology, bristling, with weapons taken from destroyed enemies. Captain Jake Morrison stood in his private quarters, staring at himself in a cracked mirror. His face was scarred from boarding actions, his hair had gone gray, and his eyes held a darkness that seemed to swallow light. He had become something he wouldn't have recognized 3 years earlier. The door chimed, and Sergeant Paul Davis entered. without waiting for permission. Davis had become Morrison's right hand, the one person who never questioned orders no matter how brutal they became. "Sir, we've located Vorthak the Destroyer," Davis reported. Morrison turned from the mirror, suddenly alert. Vorthak was the alien who had led the raid on Kepler Station, the one who had laughed about murdering families. For 2 years, Morrison had been hunting him across the galaxy. Where is he? Crimson Rock Station. Just like intelligence said, he's got a fleet of 30 ships protecting him plus the station's defenses. Morrison smiled, but it was the expression of a predator about to strike. "How many crew do we have left?" 47, Davis replied. "We lost another 6 in the last raid." Morrison nodded. They had started with over 300 crew members. Some had died in battle, others had tried to desert and been stopped, and a few had simply vanished during shore leave on alien worlds. Those who remained were the most loyal, or the most broken. "Gather everyone in the cargo bay," Morrison ordered. "It's time to finish this." The cargo bay had been converted into a briefing room and trophy hall. The walls were lined with weapons taken from defeated enemies, and holographic displays showed the locations of destroyed raider bases. In the center of the room stood a table made from the hull plating of Vorthak's personal ship, which they had destroyed 6 months earlier. Morrison's remaining crew assembled before him. They looked more like pirates than Starfleet officers, their uniforms modified with alien armor and weapons. Lieutenant Kate Barnes stood near the back, her face showing the strain of everything they had done. "Today we reach the end of our journey," Morrison announced. "Vorthak the Destroyer waits for us at Crimson Rock. The alien who murdered my sister, who slaughtered thousands of innocent humans, thinks he's safe behind his fortress walls." The crew listened in silence. They had heard Morrison's speeches before, but this one felt different. There was a finality to it that made everyone uncomfortable. "We're going to attack the station directly," Morrison continued. "I know the odds are against us, but we've beaten worse odds before. And when we're done, every raider in the galaxy will know what happens to those who prey on humanity." Engineer Beth Clark raised her hand hesitantly. She had joined the crew 6 months earlier, when the original chief engineer, Ryan Murphy, had died during a raid on a weapons depot, sir. "What about after Vorthak? Do we return to human space?" Morrison looked at her for a long moment before answering. "There will always be another threat, another enemy of humanity to hunt down. Our mission doesn't end with one alien." Barnes stepped forward, her face troubled. "Sir, with respect, this isn't what we signed up for. We joined Starfleet to explore and defend, not to become judges and executioners." Morrison's expression hardened. "You signed up to protect humanity," he said coldly. "That's exactly what we're doing. The only difference is that we're willing to do what's necessary, while the rest of Starfleet sits in comfortable offices and writes diplomatic notes." Intelligence Officer Mark Taylor activated a holographic display showing Crimson Rock Station. Taylor had replaced the previous intelligence officer after the man had suffered a nervous breakdown during an interrogation session. "The station has heavy shields and over 200 defensive turrets," Taylor reported. "But our analysis shows a weak point in the lower docking bay. If we can get close enough, we can punch through their defenses." Morrison studied the tactical display with the eye of someone who had become expert at planning destruction. "We'll modify our remaining shuttles with the alien cloaking devices we salvaged. A small team will infiltrate the station and disable their shields from the inside, while the Regret attacks from outside." Davis nodded approvingly. "Who leads the infiltration team?" I do, Morrison replied. The room erupted in surprised murmurs. Morrison had led from the front during their first few raids, but lately he had remained on the ship while others took the risks. Sir, that's not necessary, Barnes said. You're needed here to coordinate the attack. Morrison shook his head. I've been hunting Vorthak for 2 years. I'm going to look him in the eyes when I kill him. 3 days later, the Regret approached Crimson Rock Station under full stealth. The fortress was massive, carved out of an asteroid and bristling with weapons. 30 raider ships patrolled the area, their crews confident that no one would be foolish enough to attack such a heavily defended position. Morrison led a team of 12 through the station's lower levels, moving like ghosts through corridors, filled with sleeping raiders. They had become experts at silent killing, and the alien guards never saw them coming. When they reached the shield generator, Morrison paused to look at the alien technology. 2 years of constant warfare had taught him things about alien systems that no Starfleet engineer knew. Disable it, but don't destroy it completely, he ordered. I want them to know we're here before we finish this. The shields flickered and died, and immediately alarms began blaring throughout the station. Morrison smiled as he heard the panic in the alien voices echoing through the corridors. Time to go find Vorthak, he said. The alien commander was in his private chambers when Morrison kicked down the door. Vorthak was larger than most of his species, with scars covering his thick hide and weapons mounted on his arms. The human death captain! Vorthak snarled, reaching for his weapons. I have been expecting you. Morrison drew his modified plasma pistol, but he didn't fire immediately. Do you remember Kepler Station? Morrison asked. I remember killing weak humans who begged for their lives, Vorthak replied. Your sister screamed prettily before she died. Morrison's control finally snapped. The rage that had been building for 2 years exploded out of him, and he emptied his weapon into the alien's body. But even after Vorthak was dead, Morrison continued to fire, until the weapon overheated. When he finally stopped, Morrison felt empty. The moment he had been living for was over, and he realized that killing Vorthak hadn't brought back his sister or the families of Kepler. The dead were still dead, and he was still the monster he had become. Davis found him sitting on the floor, next to Vorthak's body, staring at nothing. Sir, we need to go. The station is falling apart, and enemy ships are closing in. Morrison looked up at his sergeant with eyes that seemed older than time. It doesn't matter, he said quietly. None of it matters. They barely escaped Crimson Rock before the station exploded, taking half the raider fleet with it. As the Regret limped away from the battle, Morrison made a decision that would seal their fate. Set course for the Void Sector, he ordered. Barnes looked at him in shock. The Void Sector was a region of space where ships went to disappear, filled with spatial anomalies and unknown dangers. Sir, why are we going there? Morrison looked out at the stars through the damaged viewport, because there's nothing left for us anywhere else. As the Regret jumped to hyperspace for the last time, Morrison understood that they had become the very thing they had once fought against. They were no longer protectors of humanity. They were ghosts, haunted by their own actions and condemned to wander the void forever. The most feared ship in the galaxy was about to vanish into legend, but the darkness they had embraced would follow them into whatever came next. 13 years later, Commander Alex Turner stood on the bridge of the UHS Phoenix, watching his sensors track something that shouldn't exist. The energy signature was unmistakable, but the ship it came from had been declared lost over a decade. "Ago, sir, the contact is moving toward the civilian shipping lanes," reported Lieutenant Sam Parker. His tactical officer Turner studied the readings and felt his blood run cold. Whatever was out there was massive, heavily armed, and using technology that human science couldn't explain. "Open a channel to the contact," Turner ordered. The view screen flickered to life, showing the bridge of a ship that looked like it had been built in a fever dream. The walls were covered with alien symbols and pulsing organic growths that seemed to breathe. Standing in the center of it all was a figure that might once have been human. Captain Jake Morrison looked like he had aged 50 years in 13. His hair was white, his skin was pale and marked with strange scars, and his eyes glowed with an inner light that hurt to look at directly. Behind him stood what remained of his crew, and they looked even worse. "This is Commander Turner of the UHS Phoenix," Turner said, trying to keep his voice steady. "Identify yourself." Morrison smiled, and Turner saw that his teeth had been replaced with something that looked like metal. "You know who I am, Commander," Morrison said. "I'm the ghost that Starfleet tried to forget. I'm the nightmare that parents tell their children about when they misbehave." Turner looked at the readings from his science officer. The ship that had once been the UHS Regret was now something else, entirely. Its hull was covered with technology that seemed to be part machine, part organism. Weapons that defied classification sprouted from its surface like tumors. "Morrison, you're in violation of about 50 different regulations," Turner said. "Surrender your vessel and prepare to be boarded." Morrison laughed, and the sound made several of Turner's crew members step back from their stations. "Surrender?" Morrison said. "Commander, I've spent 13 years in the void learning things. That would break your mind. I've seen the edge of reality and the things that live there. Do you really think your little ship worries me?" Lieutenant Kate Barnes stepped into view behind Morrison, and Turner barely recognized her. The young officer he had read about in the files was gone, replaced by something that looked like it had been carved from living shadow. "Jake," Barnes said quietly. "Tell him why we're here." Morrison nodded, and his expression became serious. 3 days ago, something emerged from the deep void, Morrison said. "Something that makes the raiders who hit Kepler look like children playing with toys. They call themselves the Devourers, and they consume entire civilizations." Turner felt his stomach drop. His ship had been sent to investigate reports of missing colonies in this sector. "What kind of threat are we talking about?" Morrison gestured to someone off-screen, and the view screen changed to show tactical data that made Turner's blood freeze. Dozens of ships unlike anything in known space were moving toward human territory, leaving dead worlds in their wake. "They don't want resources or territory," Morrison continued. "They consume life itself, breaking it down into energy that feeds their technology. I've seen what they did to the Corvan homeworld. 8 billion beings reduced to empty husks in 6 hours. Turner looked at his own tactical display, which showed only 3 human ships in the entire sector. "Why are you telling me this? Why help us?" Morrison was quiet for a long moment before answering. "Because 13 years ago, I failed to protect innocent people. I became something terrible in my quest for revenge, and I lost everything that mattered. This is my chance to remember what I was supposed to be." The communication was interrupted by alerts from Turner's sensor station, "Sir. Multiple contacts dropping out of hyperspace," reported his science officer. "Unknown configuration, massive. Energy signatures." The Devourer fleet appeared on their screens like a plague of locusts. The ships were biological in nature, covered with what looked like chitin and pulsing with veins of dark energy. Each vessel was the size of a human battleship, and there were over 100 of them. "This is it," Morrison said over the comm. "Commander, get your ship out of here and warn Starfleet. Tell them what's coming." Turner looked at the overwhelming enemy force and made a decision. Negative. "The Phoenix stands with you." Morrison's scarred face showed something that might have been gratitude. "Then we die together defending what matters." The battle that followed would be remembered as one of the most desperate in human history. The Phoenix and the transformed Regret stood alone against an enemy that had destroyed entire star systems. Morrison's ship moved like a living thing, its hybrid technology allowing it to perform maneuvers that should have been impossible. Weapons that combined human engineering with alien science, and something even stranger tore through devourer ships like they were made of paper. Turner watched in amazement as the Regret seemed to phase between dimensions, appearing inside enemy formations and devastating them before vanishing again. "How is he doing that?" Turner's tactical officer asked. "I don't think I want to know," Turner replied. The battle raged for hours, and slowly the human ships began to gain ground. Morrison's crew fought with a skill and fury that came from 13 years of constant warfare, while Turner's people showed the courage that had always been humanity's greatest strength, but there were too many enemies. For every devourer ship they destroyed, 2 more took its place. "Phoenix, this is Morrison," came the call over the comm. "My ship is heavily damaged. I'm going to ram their command vessel. Get out of here while you can." Turner watched as the Regret, scarred and burning, turned toward the largest devourer ship. "Morrison, wait," Turner said. "There has to be another way." "There is no other way," Morrison replied. "This is what I was meant to do. Not revenge, not hatred, but protection. Tell Starfleet that the crew of the Regret died as they lived, defending humanity." The transformed ship accelerated toward the enemy command vessel, its remaining weapons firing continuously. The devourer ships tried to stop it, but Morrison's vessel had become something beyond their understanding. In the final moment before impact, Morrison appeared on Turner's screen one last time. "Tell them we remembered who we were supposed to be," Morrison said. The explosion when the Regret struck the command ship was visible from 3 star systems away. The resulting energy cascade destroyed the entire Devourer fleet and created a nebula that would burn for 1,000 years. Turner and his crew survived, though their ship was heavily damaged. When rescue ships arrived days later, they found the Phoenix drifting near a field of debris that had once been the most feared vessel in the galaxy. Admiral Lisa Grant listened to Turner's report in silence, her face showing the weight of everything. She had learned. "So, Morrison is gone?" she asked. "The Regret is gone," Turner replied. "But I think Jake Morrison found himself again in those final moments." Months later, a memorial was built at the site of the battle. It bore the names of every crew member who had served aboard the UHS Regret, both the heroes they had been and the legends they became. The inscription read, "They sailed into darkness and found their way back to the light in cantinas across the galaxy." The stories changed. Aliens no longer spoke of the human death ship with fear, but with something approaching respect. They told of the vessel that had sacrificed itself to save worlds it had never seen, crewed by beings who remembered their duty even after losing their way. The most feared ship in the galaxy had become its unlikely savior, and in doing so, had finally found the peace that had eluded it for so long. The Regret was gone, but the legend of its redemption would outlive the stars themselves.